Well, I was born in Twin Falls, Idaho. My dad was a wildlife photographer after World War II in southern Idaho. And born in Idaho, then moved to here in the 3rd grade, moved to Murfreesboro in the 3rd grade, and went to Murfreesboro City Schools, elementary school, and Central High School. And then MTSU, went to MTSU, got an urban planning degree in the early 70s, and then had an ROTC commitment. I was commissioned through ROTC and went to the service after that. And came back to Murfreesboro, joined the photography business. Actually had been involved in the photography business. I was doing lab work for my dad in photography when I was in the 3rd grade. And I shot my first wedding when I was 14. And quite a scary event for the first time you go out to do that. But my sister and I took over the photography business from my mother and dad in 1989. We've moved over here on the public square, and we've been here ever since. My wife has been my inspiration ever since we met. We were involved in a coffee house ministry called Salt Shaker. Many years ago is how we met, and I was kind of directing it, and she was my secretary, which she still does, is keep me on track and knowledgeable about where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to do. Same thing she's done forever. But she's the director of the Rutherford County Library System. She actually got out of school and started working for the library, and she was a second banana for most of her career. And then the opportunity for her, after the girls were out of the house, to apply for the directorship. And she has such a passion for literacy and for the role that libraries play in our community, and how effective that can be in changing someone's life, the trajectory of someone's life when you actually learn how to read. So I've been involved in Read to Succeed because of Rita, and she certainly has a passion for that as well. You know, we've been quite blessed in the opportunities that we've had to serve our community and get to know our community and the people of our community. And I think that's, you know, that's made life extremely enriching and rewarding. Well, it started very young. I was not an interest in city council, but in public service. My grandmother was the first social worker in Murfreesboro. She was in the same building in City Hall. It was Council of Social Services. And she was, like I say, the welfare lady in Murfreesboro. And she had such a compassion for people, but a love for her community. And when I was young, my dad and mother were election officials. So when I became of age at 21, my dad said, "It's time for you to take over." So I started working in the elections as soon as I registered to vote. And for 30 years, I was an election official in the community, and really had never considered running for public office. But after John Pittard passed away, I had several people ask me about running. In fact, it was Raleigh Holden over at Holden Hardware one morning when they were talking about having a replacement, make an application for filling John's seat. He said, "You ought to apply." And for some reason, I just couldn't lay that down after he mentioned that to me. And I prayed about it and came to the conclusion that I needed to put my name in. And they didn't decide to appoint to fill out his term. They actually decided to leave it vacant until the next election. And when it got to the next election, I had several friends encourage me to run for office. And at that point in time, Tommy Bragg and Doug Young, two dear friends of mine, were running for office at the same time. And so I threw my hat in the ring and got elected in 2001 to serve on City Council for my first term. And then I took an 8-year sabbatical while I was finishing raising my girls, and then came back on when Toby Gilley was elected judge here in town, and his seat became vacant again. So, and ran again and was elected. So. Well, you know, I think each of us brings something to public service and a certain perspective, a demeanor. I've always valued, like I say, it started in a concern for what happens in the election process. Can we do this better? Can we make decisions better? And it's always been my intent to try to connect government with the people it serves, and to try to do a more effective job of communicating between the two parties, because it's often, you know, we have a tendency to kind of isolate, and then the tragedy happens when we don't listen to each other, or we're not able to communicate with each other. Then the decisions aren't necessarily as good as they could be. So I've always felt like that was something I wanted to do, to make government function more effectively and more efficiently. And my experience, I've dealt with people all my life, and certainly been in this community all my life, and I just felt like I had something to offer. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience, literally all the time. I guess most people would say a caveat to some of the times, but I've enjoyed even the bad and difficult times to get through. It seems like we have grown. I've grown as an individual, but I've also felt like we have grown as a community in the process. There are, you know, government needs to be connected with its people, because all the great ideas, the perspective, the nuances to making a decision, a lot of that comes from a communication, effective communication with the public. And then the same thing, sometimes the public needs to understand how a decision was arrived at. And I think that's the issue, as to how do you effectively communicate to each other. And then in the midst of that, trust and believe in each other. The sad part of what's happened in our country is that there's a lot of complacency. My voice doesn't matter, or the fact that it's, you know, I'm not going to make any difference, so I'll just stay out of the process. But we cut our nose off to spite our face when we don't engage the public in helping us make decisions and making the right decisions with the community. And then once a decision is made, help the public understand the logic behind a decision. And I think that's what the role of a city councilman should be, is being that bridge between the decision makers and the people that the decisions are made for, the public. The people. You know, the neat thing about our community is it is made up of caring people. And while we're extremely diverse, our backgrounds are diverse, our ways of looking at a problem are diverse. Sometimes even the conclusions that we come with particular facts are different. But it's so important to respectfully dialogue. And I think if the public's engaged in it, appreciating the people that we have in our community and the diversity of our opinions and perspectives, throwing that in the pot, listening to each other, effective listening to each other, then we can make the decisions that we need to make for the best decisions going forward for our community. And the people are the resource for that. Something that I think a lot of people know, because I've had so many people. I've coached Little League Baseball now for this is my 46th year of coaching Little League Baseball. It's in the same program that I grew up in, that I was in when I was a young man. Lots of young people have come through our program, and someone asked me the other day, when are you going to give it up? And I said, when it stops being fun. But it is extremely fun and exciting, because at the age of the kids that I work with are anywhere from 9, when I started, 9 to 12, and now it's 11 and 12-year-olds. You can pour good stuff into them. It's not just about baseball. I always tell people that the baseball field is a classroom where you're communicating values to young people. And at 11 and 12, they're not distracted by cars and girls or boys. And you've got their attention. Baseball's real significantly important to them. And the game of baseball is a great vehicle to try to communicate values. You've got to deal with success. You've got to learn to work together. And you've got to understand that you have certain lanes in that process. You won't make a decision as whether you're out or safe, or it's a ball or a strike, and you won't decide where you play and when you play. But you can still control your attitude and your actions in the context of a baseball game. And it's just really been rewarding for me to be a part of helping people, young people, understand that. And another thing, I don't think people realize, I was actually in the band when I was in high school. Played the trombone in the marching band at Central High School when I went to Central, and hadn't played music for 4 or 5 years. And when I married my wife, they started a bell choir at our church, and my wife went to the first practice and she said, "We need you, you need an extra person." So that's been about 30 years now that we have been involved. My wife and I play at the bell choir at our church, First Presbyterian Church, and we really, it's such a neat experience to work on a piece and to see the collaborative effort of a lot of people come together. You just do your part, and when it all comes together, it makes something really beautiful. And there may be an analogy to that, to why I enjoy public service, is when we all work together, we can make beautiful music together. Well, you know, the thing that we don't necessarily understand what problems are going to be faced in 10 years, so it's hard to say specifically what we're going to face. So I think the thing that we need to be nurturing, we need the protocols that we need to establish, the relationships, because effective government is about relationships. And so I think the issue is we have to understand how to talk to each other and how to engage in the process. I've often seen in the midst of a public hearing, sometimes the first time anyone's ever appeared in public is when something's happening in their backyard. And and they struggle to try to, you know, effectively communicate with the people that will be making the decisions. So I think we have to learn. We have to be engaged. We have to be informed. It's a process. So I think the most effective thing we can do as we look towards 10 years in our future is to establish some protocols, commit ourselves to each other and to our community, engaging in the system so that we actually have information that we really need, and we listen to each other in that process. Because I think the goal in 10 years, my goal is a sustainable quality of life for our citizens. There's a lot of challenges to that, and we all know some of the ones that we're facing now. But I don't think there's any challenge that we can't meet if we commit ourselves to effective communication and involvement in the process, continuing to work for the betterment of our community, and build trust with each other. We don't have to agree, but learning to trust each other in spite of our differences can make a big difference in the quality of life. Because I think my goals are no different than any citizen in our community. We want our kids and our grandkids, we want ourselves to have a community that is safe, that is inspiring, a community that inspires people. And I think the process is where we find that, committing ourselves to that kind of process and growing that, even in spite of our differences, but growing to try to find what is the good quality of life for our citizens in the future. And then I think it doesn't matter what the problems are, we can overcome them.